Welcome to Innie Masks. This video shows how to make an Innie mask start to finish in real time. There are two pattern pieces for this mask. There is a big piece and a little piece, and also a template for marking the darts for the chin and the nose. Innie Guy has made PDFs of my pattern, which can be found in the description. He also edited these videos and added the written instructions, so thank you, Innie Guy. So here I'm going to whip up a quick mask without bothering with some of the extra steps that a lot of masks require. There's not really any ironing, no top stitching, no clipping of seams. You can choose to do any of those things. It will certainly be neater, but I find you don't have to if you don't really want to. So we're cutting out the smaller of the two pattern pieces. This is just a single layer of fabric. Line it up and trace out your pattern on the wrong side of the fabric. I use a washable fabric marker or a pencil. On this fabric, I had previously cut out one of the big pattern pieces, and you can see I have the edge where it's easy for me to line it up, and I have less space and waste between the pattern pieces. So when you cut it out directly on the line, and set this piece aside for now. To cut out the big pattern piece, the fabric is doubled, so fold it in half first, with the right sides together. Place your big pattern piece with one edge on the folded side, and trace around the two edges. You're going to see me move my pattern piece down an inch. I leave an inch at the top of the pattern for symmetry, especially if I'm cutting out a whole lot of fabric. But for each individual mask, you don't need that top inch. So I just move it down an inch and trace across the top. You could very easily just trim the top edge of that pattern off, but I just leave it on. And now cut your fabric out directly on the lines that you just traced. And once I get this cut out, you'll notice that where I just removed the big piece leaves just the right shape if I wanted to come along and cut out my next little piece pattern. This piece of fabric is a fat quarter, and if I was making a batch of masks, I could get two big pieces and two little pieces. And that would let me make two masks out of each fat quarter piece of fabric. Now we folded the little piece in half, wrong side out, right sides together, because we're going to mark the sewing lines for the nose and chin darts. If you wanted to be more precise about it, you could definitely iron that piece down to make the seam a little crisper, but you don't really need to. So I have this template I made to mark the nose and chin darts at the top and bottom of each of the folded portions of the pieces. Innie mask is reversible, and it's the same top and bottom. So as long as you line the template up nicely and sew directly on the marked lines, your two pieces will fit together just fine. Now we're going to sew the nose and chin darts. So right on the line, I do a little back stitching at the beginning and at the end of each line of stitching. And once I do one side of the piece, I just squish up to the next side and continue from there. Then I just grab my next piece and chain them together, one after the other. Remembering to backstitch a little bit at the beginning and end of each one. We do not need the excess fabric that is left over here, so trim off the little triangles of fabric that you've made, close to the stitch line but not too close. You don't want it to come apart, about 1/8 of an inch, and separate your pieces as you go. And that is all the trimming you have to do. The next step is folding up the edges on the ends to prevent fraying when you have the finished product. So all 4 of the edges of the pieces, so the two on the big piece and 2 on the little piece, you're going to do a double fold towards the wrong side. It doesn't have to be that tiny, but it really doesn't matter how big or little you make it. It usually works out as long as you are pretty consistent through each piece. I fold over a centimeter, and then a centimeter again. Hold it down with my fingers, press down the creases, and hold it while I sew pretty close to the folded edge, 1/8 of an inch or so from the folded edge. And you do not have to backstitch here. All of these corners are going to be sewn over again when we put the two pieces together. And again, I just chain them one after another, reach back around, grab the little piece, and do that final edge. Please feel free to iron here if you'd like to. It does make it a little easier when you push it through the machine. If your fabric is hard to tell the right side from the wrong side, just always make sure you're folding towards the side where you have sewn your nose darts, nose and chin darts. Now it's time to put the two pieces together. So open up the big piece. Lay it flat with the right side facing upwards towards you and smooth down the little pocket that is formed by the nose and chin area. Flip the little piece, wrong sides together, right sides out, and line up the corners. Then tuck the little piece into the big piece so that all the seams line up and it's snug in there. Use your finger to sort of sweep in there and make sure it's all tucked in. Open up the little piece so you can see the wrong sides and flatten it out. Now starting on one side, fold one of the sides of the big piece up and over the little piece, making sure that it all lines up on the sides and the edges. So notice you're not folding the sides all the way up to the center of the piece. There's going to be about 2 centimeters, or equivalent to how much you folded back when you sew down the edges. The most important thing is to line up the sides on the flat part and the angled part, so that when you sew everything together, you're going to catch everything as you go. Now to pin them together, I usually just throw in 2 pins, because when I sew, I don't want to stop and take pins out. But it is easier if you add like 4 pins total. And sew down both sides. I'm using about a 1/2 inch seam allowance from the edge of the fabric. That's about the width of my presser foot. I do backstitch at the top and the bottom. It's a pretty straight shot, but I do like to slow down once I get to the middle. Make sure everything is laying flat, that I'm catching all the pieces that I want to, and that I am opening up that middle area so that I'm not making another crease on the other side. And finishing off the end of the tab, backstitching. At this point, you could snip around or trim away some of the excess fabric, but I never bother and it always works out fine for me in the end. From here, we turn the whole thing inside out. I start with one of the tabs on one of the sides, flip that around, do the other side, and then we do want to square off those corners, so I take something pokey and get it in there, push it outwards. These are going to be the side tabs of our mask that will be folded over to create the channel that holds the attachments. Then I check to make sure I've caught all of the corners that I want before I turn it the rest of the way out by pulling one of the tabs through the middle piece and out. From there, I just take my fingers, flatten it out, press out the seams a little bit, open it up, fold it in half, make sure it lays flat, and that is looking good. To make the space to add your elastic or your ties, just take that side flap, fold it over so it's butting up right against the little piece, and sew pretty close to the edge, again about 1/8 of an inch, and flip over the other side and repeat. Oh, I am back stitching at the top and the bottom of each of these stitches just to reinforce, since there will be an elastic or a tie going through there. Trim off your loose threads. And the last step is making the line of stitches where you can put a removable nose wire in. So it doesn't matter which side you pick the prettiest side. And I have a piece of tape here that I've made, but you can just use a ruler, where I've marked 4 inches. So there's a mark in the middle and 2 inches on each side. I just line up that middle dart on the middle line, and again mark 2 inches from either side, so for 4 inches total. If you don't want to mark the piece, you can use 2 pins 4 inches apart. Place the piece at least a ½ inch, just a little bit over a ½ inch. Starting at one mark, back stitch, and go your 4 inches up until the next mark, and back stitch a little bit there. Just try to keep that line straight and parallel to the edge of your mask. Now, if you don't want to make a nose channel, it is a good idea to do a line of top stitching very close to the top and the bottom of the mask. That way it won't open up and lose its shape in the washing machine when you wash it. The nose wire length is 4 inches for this mask and the large mask. If you're making a child's mask, I'd take it to about 3½ inches. So you can see here we've got the pocket on the inside. If you wanted to add a third layer, you can wear this mask with either side facing out. It looks good both ways. The spaces on the side should be plenty big enough for any sort of attachment you may want to put on there. So that took about 12 minutes or so to make a mask. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and it will help you make your own Indie Mask.